You've probably heard the old saying, don't play with your food, but sometimes it can be hard to resist, especially when you're hungry and that plate of spaghetti is just staring back at you. It's not like it's alive or anything, right? Well, maybe it is. Join us today as we look at some creepy pasta about sentient pasta and other dishes that will make you never look at your dinner the same way again. We all love dolls. How could you not? They real little figures that we dress up and imagine are real little people who just happen to have no faces and live in our houses. Now, most dolls are completely harmless, but there are some dolls out there that are seriously creepy. Like tis one. Every night the doll would smile a little wider. At first, Emma didn't think much of it. She was just a doll, after all. But then she started noticing more things. Every morning the doll's eyes seemed to glisten a little more, her smile seeming a bit wider than the day before. And she also seemed to glow an eerie, unsettling green color in the light of the full moon. Emma tried to ignore these strange occurrences, but they only got worse. She started hearing strange music coming from the attic at night, a music box melody that sounded hauntingly familiar yet disturbingly discordant. The doll was also beginning to move around the house, appearing in places she hadn't been before. Emma decided enough was enough. She would confront the doll once and for all. With flashlight in hand, she crept up the stairs into the dusty attic. As she approached the doll, its head turned slowly, its glowing eyes boring into hers. The music box began to play loudly as the doll smiled wide, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. Emma screamed and ran, tripping over boxers and knocking over furniture until she made it to the door. As she opened it, the music box stopped abruptly. Panting, she looked back at the attic stairs, but saw nothing. The next morning, Emma went back to the attic, but the doll was gone. Had she imagined the whole thing? Was she going crazy? Then she noticed something strange. The music box was now downstairs in the living room, its melody echoing softly through the empty house. And sitting on top of it was the doll, smiling wider than ever. Dolls may seem innocent, but some of them hold a darkness that should never be awakened. This next story comes from Reddit user Skittles and Sunshine. I had a neighbor when I was growing up who was obsessed with the occult and collected all sorts of weird stuff. One time I asked if I could go into his shed and see what he had. He said sure and gave me a warning. He said there was one thing I wasn't allowed to touch under any circumstances. I was curious, so I took mental note. As I walked around, I saw lots of odd things, like taxidermy, human skulls, and swords. I then noticed a closed wooden chest in the corner. I went over and hesitantly lifted the lid. Inside was a large, ornate doll. It was like those old-fashioned ones you see in horror movies. It was beautiful and creepy at the same time. I wanted to show my friend, so I picked her up and dusted her off. As soon as I touched her, though, I felt a jolt run through my arm. I quickly set her back down and told my friend I found a doll in the shed. When I turned around, she was standing right in front of me. Before I could react, she reached out and scratched up my face. I ran home as fast as I could. My face was covered in scratches. doctor said they were the worst scratches he'd seen in a while, looking like they'd been done by a wild animal. To this day, I still have scars from those scratches. I never went back to that. Shed and I haven't seen my neighbor in years. But every time I see a doll, I remember the pain and terror of being attacked by the doll from the shed. Our next Reddit story comes from user, The Ghost of You. I was babysitting my 2 younger siblings when our dad left for work and our mom went grocery shopping. We were watching TV when I heard loud banging from the basement. Assuming it was my dad, Premeta yelled back. Then I realized he was already home. Curious, I went to check it out. When I got to the bottom of the stairs, I saw a rocking chair moving by itself. I called up to my siblings, but they were engrossed in their show and couldn't hear me. I was debating whether I should tell them when I saw the rocking speed up. Concerned, I went closer to investigate. Then I saw something even stranger. There was a baby doll sitting in the chair, eerily realistic. It rocked faster and faster until it was almost flying through the air. I ran as fast as I could away from the basement and upstairs to get my siblings. They didn't believe me, but we checked anyway. The doll was gone. Years later, I learned that my great-grandmother had passed away in that very house in the 1930s. Her name was Mary, and she used to rock in that very same chair. And she always had a doll with her. So rest in peace, Mary. And if you ever hear a rocking chair moving by itself, it's probably just the wind. Unless, of course, you hear it on a day with no wind at all. Our next story comes from Reddit user Kamikaze Turtle. When I was 4 years old, my parents divorced and I moved with my mother, my sister, and my brother to an apartment in the city. My mother worked as a nurse at a local hospital, and my grandmother watched us kids while she worked. One night I woke up and couldn't find my teddy bear. I asked my grandmother where he was, and she said she didn't know. She then suggested I go downstairs and check, because he might have gotten loose. Being cautious, I grabbed my trusty flashlight and crept down the dark hallway. At the end of the hall was a door that led to the outside. I checked both sides of the door, but my teddy bear was nowhere to be found. I was about to give up when I heard a noise coming from behind the door. Slowly, I approached it and pressed my ear against the cold wood. On the other side, I heard shuffling noises and muffled humming. Curious, I opened the door, revealing a pitch-black room. With my flashlight, I illuminated the space and gasped. In the middle of the room was my teddy bear, and in front of him sat a porcelain doll, its eyes gleaming eerily in the darkness. I turned and ran back to my room, slamming the door behind me. From that day on, I never went near that door again. Dolls may seem like innocent toys, but they can become sinister when they come to life. Our next Reddit story comes from user Puffin Pie. When I was young, we had an antique doll that was passed down from my great-grandmother to my grandmother to me. No one really knows how old the doll was, but it looked like one of those old-fashioned ones you'd see in Victorian ghost stories. It had a faded blue dress and a vacant, expressionless stare. It also had real human hair for a wig, which my grandmother would brush every so often. One day my sister and I were playing with the doll, and I decided to comb her hair. As I did, I noticed something strange. Each strand of hair seemed to have a faint pulse, like a heartbeat. I brushed it off and continued until suddenly the doll's head jerked forward, its eyes flashing open. Terrified, I dropped the brush and stumbled back. The doll then slowly turned its head back and smiled. I screamed and ran away, hiding under my bed. I never looked at the doll the same way again. Sometimes food can be more than just food. It can be a source of comfort, a way to connect with others. But for some, food can become an obsession. That's all for today. Which story was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to come back for more